All right. So I wanted to give you all a second what if analysis video. So that's what I'm going to go over here, go over some key points, different types of what if analyses, just to kind of give you another way to think about these. Okay, so here we have a standard cash flow. You can see here we have all our assumptions up top, and then it's just a 20-year cash flow. We have a loan, a certain rate, a loan term, calculated monthly payments already. Here's our upfront cost. Here's our annual kilowatt hour reduction, and real discount rate and inflation rate. Okay. The energy costs happen to be on the other page, so the cost per kilowatt hour here, the marginal cost per kilowatt hour is on the other page, so it works. So this is all calculated out for you. So what we want to do is we're going to test a few questions, a few what if analyses. So what if we change some of these variables? So what if we want to know the changing the NPV? I'm going to highlight the NPV down here, just make it easier to see. So if we want to look at the impacts on NPV of a couple of different variables, so one, we can look at the real discount rate. So what happens if we go through here and we get a 2% discount rate, and what if we get 4% discount rate, and whatever any percentage. We kind of want to look at some like an array. And so what we're going to do first is explore what is the NPV at 1 to 20%, real discount rate at 1% increments. Okay, so this is already, you should know how to do this pretty well, so I'm just going to kind of skip some of the parts, but one of the first things that's really important to remember, one of my sort of key point number one, is you have to have the right setup. Okay, so we're doing 1 to 20% real discount rate, and what's the impact on the NPV? So terminology I use, just with a background in science, is I think of the independent variable as the one you're changing. Okay, so in this case, we're changing the real discount rate. I think of the dependent variable, right? So the independent in science is the one you manipulate, you change, and see the impact. So that's our one that we're varying on purpose. The sort of dependent variable is the one that we're measuring the impact on. So it's sort of like the results of the experiment, if we're going to continue with that metaphor. Anyway, so that's the terminology I'll use here. So in this case, our dependent variable, remember this is what we're trying to figure out the impact on, if I can spell that right. So the dependent variable is net present value, okay? So this is really, really important, so make sure you do this. You're effectively seeing, Excel is basically plugging in different values for the real discount rate and seeing what happens to this exact cell. Not just this number, not this value, but this cell. So when you set it up, if your dependent variable, you have to set it, notice how I've set it equal to this exact cell. That's essential because that's really what you're trying to figure out. Remember, you're really just trying to figure out, okay, I changed this to a bunch of different values. What happens to this exact cell? So make sure that that's like sort of part one of that setup. Number two, just make sure it's above here, and then all of your independent variables are below it. You can do it horizontally if you want. I'll demonstrate that in a minute, but just make sure it's right below it. You can label it or not. This is not important. Okay, so now it's all set up. So let's highlight. Remember, you just have to highlight the whole array here, and then it's of course data. It's what if analysis. It's data table. Okay, so remember, it looks a little, I don't know, a little funky to me, but it says row input cell and column input cell. It's column input cell because these are all in a column. That's what it's referring to. I don't make the rules, So we are changing the discount rate. So we just need to highlight the real discount rate. So it shows up here. Hit OK. Okay, we got some numbers, a lot of numbers. Let's see, one way to sort of check these is our real discount rate. Remember, this is our original dependent variable. It's at 3%. This net present value, right? So at 3%, we should have the same, and we do exactly. So looks good. All right. So what's nice about this is you can change absolutely anything on any table. I mean, anything that's in a formula that has results that are in the right place, you can analyze. So like I could do loan rate, I could do upfront cost, I could do a bunch of things. So let's do the loan rate just to see what happens with different loan rates because it's those can be definitely variable. So net present value of a loan rate between 2 and 11.5% in 0.5% increments. So we have 2 to 11.5%. Okay, remember here's our net present value. That's our dependent variable. Make sure it's equal to this cell right there, which it is. That's good. Make sure it's in the right arrangement. That's good. And then it's just simply you highlight, you do data, you do what if analysis, you do data table, you do, remember we are changing now our loan rate. So make sure you hit the right one. That should be good. Okay, let's see if this makes sense. 6% is our initial loan rate. Matches up with our original net present value. Good. Okay, so you can do anything on this. It doesn't matter how complex. I mean, I've seen like, really complicated spreadsheets that as long as you can change one value and get the, one result, it doesn't matter how complicated the formula is. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Maybe, just both for now, but also sort of future reference if you ever kind of, investigate some different scenarios. Okay, so that's kind of the first, like the basic setup. Now here's a really important tip. This has tripped people up in the past, so make sure you pay attention to this. So your independent variable must be on the same page. So in other words, it has to be the same page as your what if analysis. Okay. So let's look at that one. So this would be for our net present value at 0.5 cent to 15 cent marginal energy cost in 1 cent increments, right? So this would be, actually let's change this 0.05, 0.06, and then we'll go all right down. Sorry about that. Go all the way up to 15. It's kind of low, but that's okay. Sorry. There we go. Get rid of that. Okay, so we're looking at the net present value, right? So it has to be equal to this cell right here. So let's click that cell. That's good. Okay, so we don't see, remember the cost per kilowatt hours on this tab. So let's just select that tab for that's our independent variable, right? So this this energy savings is based on partially on that energy cost page, right? So it's the cost per kilowatt hour over here. All right. So we can just select that. That's fine. All right. So we select this whole thing, data, what if, data table. Now remember our column, we're changing the kilo per kilowatt hour costs. So that is over here. So let's click that. And we get an error. Why do we get an error? We're going to, okay, it's getting mad at me. I'm going to cancel. So what's the problem? The problem is my independent variable is on a different page. Sorry, you can't see that. The independent variable is on a different page. You just can't do it. It's just not going to work. Okay. So there are some workarounds, and I'm going to let you think through that one because that's a really good problem to solve if you feel like it. But there's a way. Remember, all you need to do is make sure that when you do this and you do the data table, that this is on this page. So it's a pretty easy fix, but I'm going to let you think about that. But that's just an FYI. All right, so for the last one, we can actually do, well, there's actually two things here. Number one, the dependent variable can be on a different page. All right, so we can't select the independent variable from somewhere else, but the dependent can. In other words, we can measure the impact on something on another page as long as the independent variable is on the existing page. So just keep it straight. All right, so we have a cash flow too on the second page here. All right. One thing you might notice is that this discount rate is actually based on here. Okay, so when this cell changes, that net present value will change. In other words, we're going to measure the cash flow on, we're going to measure the impact on net present value of cash flow 2, which is this other tab, by changing the discount rate. All right, so we're going to say we're going from 1 to 20% with the real discount rate, and our independent variable is cash flow 2. So let's try that. Cash flow 2 over here, that's our net present value. All right. So now we have cash flow 2. We are trying to figure out what happens when the real discount rate changes. So let's just see if this is valid. So right now it should change if I change this real discount rate. So let's try it. So you notice it does change. All right. And so that means it actually is indeed based on this value. So in other words, we need to change this cell and see the change on this cell, okay? All right, so we can do that from a different page, which is great. So here's this cell. Remember, that's set to the other page. And so we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to select, we're going to do what if, we're going to data table, and then we're going to do our input cell is now this real discount rate, which is on this page, and it's fine. Okay, so you see 3% matches up with 3%, so we're good. Okay, so keep that in mind. Dependent variable can be on any page. I think it has to be in the same workbook, but I'm not sure. It can definitely be in a different tab. All right, so then our last scenario, we have that independent variable that was on a different, oh, that's right, we already did that. So let's do a double variable, right? So what happens, what's the NPV at 1%, or real discount rate from 1 to 20%, and to 11.5% interest rate in 5% increments. In other words, we want to figure out what happens when we change the interest rate and the discount rate. So you can do that. It's great. That's why you have that column in the row input. All right. So we remember doing real discount rate 1 to 20%. So that's right here. That's good. And then we are looking at the the interest rate from 2 to 11.5%. So we have that here. We can just copy that. Should be able to. It's been giving me trouble. I hit Control C, and you should be able to right click. It's just not letting me do this, and I don't know why. I should be able to right click and do transpose and copy sideways, but you know what? I'm just gonna have to do it manually because it's just being finicky right now. So again, the arrangement is really important. It has to start here. Okay, so this is 2%. This is 2.5%. And so on. So we're going to go all the way out to 11.5. I don't know what's going on here. Hold on. It should be a percentage. Okay. Try that again. 2%. 2.5%. And it should be able to go out. No problem. Well, since I don't want it to go off the screen, let's just keep it with the 8.5%. It doesn't matter, actually. Okay, so let's make that. Okay, sorry, really not sure what's happening there. Okay, so now we have the loan rate, and we have the real discount rate, and here, again, is this cell. So we'll select that. Should work if we go like so. So now we should go all the way over. Should we select the whole array? Okay, that's really important that everything's selected. Then we do data, we do what if analysis, we do data table. Now we have two variables. So our row here is our APR. So let's click our APR. Our column is our real discount rate. So for column, just select real discount rate. Hit OK. OK, a lot of numbers. Remember, our initial rate is 3% real and 6% APR. So let's see what that is. So here's our 6% APR. And then a 3% real is right here. So that would be this number, which is 2906, which is here. A little trick you probably remember from Excel classes past is you can do conditional formatting here. All right, and you can highlight this to see like the trend. All right, so that's data and then conditional formatting. You can do any number of things. Sorry, do any number of more things. Here you go. This is just really being finicky. I really apologize, but if you hit color scales, it should work. It's not for whatever reason. I don't know why, but it'll highlight it. Okay. All right. So now you have a little reinforcement on doing a what if analysis in a bunch of different scenarios, some common things that go wrong, and also some sort of functionality that you have. Okay. Hopefully that helps.